listening to the 14th source for all geeky and nerdy news and discussion, which means that you're listening to a podcast.
For all intents and purposes.
I am D. Bethel.
And I'm Andrew Asplund.
And we are your two overeducated, codependent nerd hosts, bringing you the things that we like to talk about, but filtered through inquisitive and critical lenses. In the episode for Friday, June 7th, 2024. And I'd like to welcome everybody to episode 1 of this podcast. If you don't know, Andrew and I have been friends for a long time, and we have some podcasting experience behind us. And but yeah, we come at this, we're overeducated.
Whoa. Are you rebooting us?
I thought that's what happened when you hit 10 years on a podcast. It just kind of, turns over, starts anew, like when you max out an odometer.
So, wait, we're rebooting it? Really? Because if we're going to do that, like, shouldn't we, hire better hosts?
Which means we should have a budget. Which means we should have money coming in.
Shouldn't someone else be doing this at this point?
Yeah. What we've learned is that we haven't learned a lot in 10 years.
I think, as we said, we still don't know shit.
Indeed. Which I did see, that was the episode title we gave for our 5-year anniversary.
I know. In fact, we know so little that we just recycle titles.
Right. I mean, that's the show. We recycle topics, titles, and of course, hosts. And in particular, we also recycle segments, which is what we're going to do this week, dear listeners. So we just kind of want to keep it cash today and discuss our respective weeks in geek. Andrew, what was your week in geek like this week?
I mean, this is actually really embarrassing. I actually, when I saw, hey, let's do a week in geek, I'm like, yeah. I watched the end of Star Trek Discovery.
Oh,
and yeah, I was cool. And then I looked at it, like, I talked about that last week.
That's okay. Now you have that information.
And I was like, I've been playing a lot of Fallout 76. I'm like, well, no, I talked about that, 2 or 3 weeks ago. Like, I realized that everything I've done in my week in geek has been shit I already talked about. And I'm a bit of a downer, folks. So sorry. Like, I'm not just going to repeat myself. I will say Star Trek Discovery, the finale, I enjoyed it. It was weird. I think the weirdest thing I'll say, having now seen it, for those that don't know, it's the end of season 5 and the end of the series.
Right.
But they didn't know it was the end of the series when they originally filmed it.
Oh, really? Okay.
So they basically, they brought people back and filmed like a coda, I guess, or an ending.
A TV show having reshoots. That's novel. At least they give them that opportunity.
Right. Well, because I think they realize they can't end it on a cliffhanger or whatever, right? Like whatever they were going to do originally. They're like, no, we have
5 seasons in a movie.
We have to wrap it up. So, and it's to a certain extent, I don't know what the actual, like, what the late shoots were, but I feel like I'm pretty confident, if you watch, you're like, oh, okay, this is where clearly they're like, shit, wrap it up, guys. One thing I will say is I enjoyed it. I thought it was a solid end to the show that kind of put modern Trek back on the map. But the thing that was weird, and the thing that, like, this is like the one thing I want to say about it,
okay,
is, like, without saying too much, it kind of goes into like, oh, here's people in the future. Like, here's, Michael Burnham, the main character for the show, in her old age, like kind of doing old age stuff. Okay, cool. That's fine. And it ends with her going, this is a spoiler, I guess, going to, the ship Discovery. Is sort of like like the farewell tour or whatever, with the idea being that, they're prepping Discovery for its last mission. And you're like, wow, okay, what's going on? And you're watching, it's like, wait, have they reconfigured the ship? Like, have they changed it to look like it did in season 1? And then like, oh, wait, they're like literally like scraping changes to the registration on the saucer. Like, they're making it look like it did years ago. And you're like, what? And it's really the final thing is Michael Burnham, the main character, talking to the ship's computer, which, for those that don't know, has become kind of sentient. That happened in season 2. And what you realize they're doing is they're setting it up so a short trek that they filmed, I think, after season 2, they did this short trek. What's it called? I forget what it's called. Is it called Calypso? No. It was basically this like standalone short episode about just the ship and some random dude who lands on it to salvage it. And like the relationship they develop in the far future. And it's this weird, like, it feels unrelated, right? And they always kind of said like, oh, well, okay, it doesn't really work with how the show's gone. No, they literally shoehorn it. So it's like, no, we're going to put the ship like it was in season 1 or 2 when that was filmed, just so it can become canonical. It's bizarre. The main character was named Kraft, who's played by Aldous Hodge, who was in Leverage, and for the people that saw it, Black Adam. Yeah. So basically, it was about this like weird guy who finds the ship and kind of befriends the computer and whatever. It's just weird that like you kind of thought like, oh, that doesn't work with the timeline. They're just going to give up on that. No, they literally like have this weird shoehorned, no, it works now. Look, we made the ship look like it did before. And they even say, like, the cat, Michael Burnham says like, oh, hey ship, you have something you have to do. You have someone you have to meet. Kraft. It's like, you're literally like saying, go do the short trek we filmed years ago. It is the weirdest thing about the ending. Like, it just feels like someone in the canon department was like, yeah, I gotta do this thing. We have to make it work. You know, it was just such a strange thing. Other than that, like I said, I would say everything else about the episode was interesting, compelling. I enjoyed it. And then there's this little bit at the end where like, nope, we're going to make that weird thing we filmed years ago fit.
I just wonder what the choice was that went into making that decision. Like why, like, I don't know. It's just strange. Yeah.
So I actually thought that they'd kind of said like, well, that was just a fun, dalliance they'd done. It's not real.
Yeah.
But here they are like, no, it is. It's absolutely real.
It's almost like, well, there's one loose end we could tie up if we wanted to, guys.
Yeah. So it was just such a strange, I guess, twist at the end.
Sure.
Of like, and again, and to make sure, like, if you didn't know, they want you to know that's what they're doing because they name drop the one character from that short trek. Right. Back when they did the short treks, which for those that don't know, the short treks were introduced after season 1, and they were just like these little mini episodes. I think they're actually done before season 2. Less, so they're more like, hey, as we're getting ready for season 2, here's some fun stuff to get you excited. And some of them were tied to things in the show. Some were just kind of like a fun dalliance. Because they have one about, which is ostensibly the guy that created the triple.
Okay.
And it's like almost like, I think it's a comedy sketch, basically. So they did some weird stuff. They also did some animated ones. So it's just weird that now here we are like, no, we insist this was canon. All right.
It reminds me of like Doctor Who used to do that. I think most like they did it a lot during like the Matt Smith era of like have between series they'd film little shorties or like in the lead up to and it'd be included on the DVD that it was like kind of canon, kind of not, but like those little kind of like, hey, here's a little thing that happened between seasons 5 and 6 or whatever, right? Yeah. So that's cool. I mean, that's cool. I'd like to see them do that with Strange New Worlds as well.
Well, and actually I will say there are some short treks that are tied to Strange New Worlds.
Okay, good.
Because some of them were done prior to season 2, so they basically they involve. I would say that probably the biggest one is Spock's first day.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Where it's him showing up to the Enterprise and getting stuck in the turbo lift with the XO.
That's pretty good. All right, I'll have to check these out. Are they on Paramount Plus or?
I think so. Actually, I believe they are. Yeah, they are.
So I'm not going to ask you to rank because that's arbitrary and subjective. But like Star Trek has had quite a few season or series finales at this point. Uh-huh. Kind of where, in terms of the pantheon, would you put it? Would you rank? Where would you rank it? In terms of feeling satisfied, feeling closure, how did it do in the in the pantheon of Star Trek shows for you personally? I asked the hard-hitting questions.
That is, like, you're like, no, we're like journalism here.
I'm doing the journalism now.
So, obviously, for those who don't know, the original series never had a finale. It just ended. I guess you could say Star Trek 6. Right.
Not Generations?
No, Star Trek 6. Well, because it ends with them all, like, signing their names and shit.
Oh, right.
Something I think Lower Decks has made fun of. So the original series didn't really, I don't think it had, like, a go-out episode.
Right.
Enterprise has, as I think we joked about last time, computer end program being the finale. So those are definitely bottom tier. I mean, I love Star Trek 6, but it's not a good. It just felt like it was the movie they made for which they said we're not going to make any more movies.
Right.
And the original series had nothing. Enterprise, that's a shit way to end the show. Why don't we bring in people from another show? That's how I always end my show.
Right.
But other than that, I would say that even, like, I would say, Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, and Discovery all had, and actually Picard, all had final episodes that felt like, that was a way to cap it. I'll even say, like, Voyager, which I kind of poo-poo a lot. No, it wrapped its end. Like, that finale was a finale. It took what it did, and of course it did some stuff that some people may not like, but sure. But it felt like this was them saying, this is the end of the show, let's make it good. Deep Space Nine, because it was at that point a serialized show, so it ends like, let's do all the big lift. TNG, for being an episodic, I thought it ended very well. Like, it had an episode that wrapped back to the original episode, but also felt like this was the end. And then Picard season 3, because season 3 was like the weird, let's bring them all back, right?
The reunion season.
And I think it ended, because it ends with that being the capstone. I mean, for those who don't know, it's not a big spoiler. It ends with them playing poker.
Oh, nice.
And literally, I think, if I recall, credits are coming on screen. It's just with them playing poker. I think the joke was they actually said, "Hey guys, I need you to play poker for like 30 minutes, and we're just going to film it." But it felt like that because it's a callback to TNG and everything else. So yeah, I would say that Discovery is up there. It's probably because it's a little bit shoehorned, it wasn't supposed to be the ending.
Yeah.
I think it maybe it's weaker than the rest of the ones I say are good. But I would say I think they still I think this season ended up being a pretty solid, if we're going to end it with this this story and this whatever. So yeah, I guess in that regard, I'd say it's probably the lesser of a lot of them, but only because it wasn't supposed to be the last episode.
Right. Unlike the original series, it didn't get one.
Right.
Right.
Or Enterprise, which got, computer freeze program. I mean, that should have been the title of the episode. I think it's actually called These Are the Voyages, but really, it should have been computer freeze program.
But the thing is that's coming through is this does not even come close to touching the indisputable king of series finales, that of the Star Trek, the animated series.
Oh, I forgot that one also doesn't have one either. Yeah.
No.
I think that show just ended. Yeah.
Agree to disagree, I guess. I think it's poetic. I've never seen it.
No, I think it literally, it was a cartoon.
Hey, watch your language.
It was a cartoon. There's no fun way to sell that. Yeah. So I'd say I think they did well. It obviously could have been better, but it also wasn't supposed to be the final episode.
Right.
And I think about that, when you think about, which you haven't seen yet, but Voyager or DS9, which they really, they sat down and said, how do we end this?
Well, they got 7 seasons, right?
Right.
And that's kind of, especially, post TNG. Well, I guess technically post, Deep Space Nine, where that also got 7. It's we can hit 7 on Voyager as well. Right. Enterprise, not so lucky.
And maybe that's just what it is that these shows get canceled after they've already committed to
Right.
what they were doing. And maybe that's what, like, Picard, I think, works because they knew they're like, no, we're doing one more, and then the old man has to go to sleep.
Right.
So it ends very much like, how would we do the very lastest finalist episode?
I wonder, maybe you know this information, I don't. I wonder how many seasons they had planned for Discovery, and, how things would have been different, I guess. If they, it would have been very different because it would have had more seasons to develop.
And I don't know. I don't think they planned. I think they're making it, right?
Right.
I mean, none of these shows sat down and said, we're going to make seven seasons, right? It was more like, ooh, I wonder if we can get...
The original series was the only one that kind of had a plan in mind, right?
It literally put something in the opening that said, yeah, this could be 5 years. And then they got 3. Oh, that's weird. Do you wonder why maybe TNG said it's ongoing mission in the opening?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I can't imagine why. But yeah, no, I don't know. Like I would say,
no.
Had they been told, hey, you're going to end the show when they started writing it,
right?
They certainly would have done something different, right?
Yes, for sure.
But the fact that they were given an opportunity you had a pretty good season, that feels like okay, this is a place to go out. Mm-hmm. And they did, and they had the opportunity to kind of do that, like to film Goes Outs. So it's not. I mean, again, I think they certainly could have done worse, but it did not end with lounge singing. So
that's too bad.
Spoiler, by the way.
Oh, okay. Let me guess. That's Deep Space Nine.
I was just saying, I can't imagine what that could be a reference to. And it didn't feature time travel.
Oh, wow.
That's multiple shows, actually.
It also kind of points to something we've talked about before, which is just sort of the weird, nebulous existence that is Paramount Plus right now, because Discovery doesn't air on TV, like TV proper, right? Or broadcast TV, right? It's just on Paramount Plus. And they've been canceling shows left and right, like Prodigy is whatever it is at this point. And like you said, they canceled Discovery midway through. You said they finished filming.
That's my understanding.
Yeah, and but they had enough to cover reshoots and rewriting. Like, I don't know. It's like I really wonder what the hell is going on at Paramount Plus right now. But thinking about it too much scares me. And speak to something we talked about a little bit last week of what does the future of Star Trek look like right now? Because I guess at this point, Strange New Worlds is like their flagship show after Discovery's done, and its premise is based on being a prequel.
Right. Well, and in a hot minute, it'll be their only show.
True.
Right, with Lower Decks entering its final season.
Yeah.
They have the upcoming Academy show. But,
and that movie, too, right?
Yeah, but right now, the only recurring thing is Strange New Worlds.
Wow, I'm bummed out now.
Well, I'm so glad you got into this new, exciting, fictional world. And by the way, we're going to end it all.
It keeps the tradition for me going. I don't watch these shows until they're done anyway. So.
Oh, wait, you're the problem.
My bad. I shouldn't have started watching Star Trek. That sounds like a plot for a Star Trek episode in its own right.
But anyway, so I guess that was my Week in Geek. Dan, what about you?
Speaking of good product with disappointing results, in a sense, I saw a movie called Furiosa: A Mad Max Saga.
Wow, you really started strong by saying, speaking of disappointing.
Right.
All right, tell me more, Dan.
Well, let me tell you, because the disappointment might not be what you expect. However, it might seem like what do you expect when I say this next thing. I'm a big Mad Max fan, and Fury Road came out in 2015, and it was awesome. And at the time, they said that they were going to do a prequel that focuses just on the character Furiosa, as played in Fury Road by Charlize Theron. And then absolute silence after that, despite Mad Max Fury Road being a huge success. What turned out is that there were some legal battles between George Miller and Warner Brothers that stalled any progress on the movies being made. But that's beside the point. They finally made this movie. Stars Anya Taylor-Joy and Chris Hemsworth as the villain. trailer, and I was excited. This sounds awesome, right? And I really like that character, and the world that they developed for Fury Road was just fascinating to me. Especially since we didn't get to see much of it in that movie. It's basically, if you haven't seen Fury Road, it's 2 car chases, one forward, one back.
Very, very long car chases.
Awesome car chases, by the way. Great movie. But you don't see a lot of the work.
That's why it's called Fury Road. It's not Fury headquarters.
Yeah. Right. It's not Fury Walk and Talk. And then the first trailer dropped, and I looked to the left and I looked to the right, and I said, that looks really bad. Just in terms of, this sounds terrible, like the quality, like cinematography, it looked really like green screeny, like Star Wars prequels kind of stuff. Everything was like hyper saturated and cartoonish. And I'm like, this looks like not what I wanted. And then the second trailer came out, and I'm like, oh, okay, I guess I don't have to see this movie. Nothing about the story or the whatever, just the trailer looked bad. And so it finally came out, and I'm like, I love Mad Max. I should just see it. And so I got tickets. I was so not looking forward to it that even though I had the tickets, I'm like, I could just not go if I'm not feeling it, right?
Wow.
But I did. I went and saw the film, and it was awesome.
Oh.
Like, I loved the movie. I thought it was incredible. In the sense of this, I think my initial fears are still justified. It looks weird, especially when compared to the more sort of grounded aesthetics, for what it is, of Fury Road. It's much more vibrant, saturated, a little more garish, but Mad Max, that's me splitting hairs. Mad Max is cartoonish and garish and disgusting and grotesque, right? It's not doing really anything different than any of the other previous Mad Max movies have done in terms of just how it looks. It just looked a little more CGE to me, but I think that's maybe more of a like color grading, post-processing stuff. But the actual movie, like the story, the characters, the plot, and this is going to be me putting my feet into the fire, which I always do apparently with nerd movies. It's kind of like the movie I wanted when I saw Fury Road. I like Fury Road. I love Fury Road. I was blown away by it. I think I saw it like 4 or 5 times in the theaters. But I was expecting another Mad Max movie of him just like going to these different towns and negotiating between these clans or tribes or whatever, and it's all just bonkers. This quiet, man with no name character, just sort of steeped in these different cultures and playing them against each other, which is what happens in Beyond Thunderdome, which is what happens in The Road Warrior. And instead, we got 2 very long car chases, and it was awesome. But this movie is Mad Max: Fury Walk and Talk with some cool action scenes in between. But what I wanted to, we got hints at these different regions in the world of Fury Road, of like this place called Gastown and Bullet Town, and of course we saw the Citadel, where most of the movie kind of not takes place but begins and ends. And we see hints of these different cultures in between these different towns, but they're all kind of working together in a very antagonistic way. I'm like, I want to go to these towns. It sounds awesome. But what's the first thing that Furiosa does in Fury Road? Well, as she's heading to Gastown, she turns left and goes off road, and the chase begins.
Right.
But here we go everywhere, right? And we see all these characters, and we see the wasteland for what it is in much more detail and nuance than we do in Fury Road. In a sense, it feels much more of a sequel to Mad Max and the Road Warrior and Thunderdome than Fury Road did. I'm not saying, again, bad or good. It's just giving fans of this franchise a different look at the setting, the scenario, these characters through a different story. One of the things I was worried about is it was just going to be another long car chase movie like Fury Road was, because that works so well. But like, let's set it before, and but it wasn't. It was a very different tact, and one that I enjoyed incredibly.
Well, it's good because honestly, the way you started this, I thought you were going to be like, and this movie sucked ass and I hate Mad Max now.
Well, I guess we could talk about that briefly. Like the disappointment, it's been the main discourse around this movie, aside from the reviews. It's been reviewing very well, which is what also got me skeptical. I'm like, how could it be good? The trailers look really, really bad. And then consider me a convert after watching the movie. But by some estimation, depending on the lens you want to look at it through, and this is a conversation you and I have had a lot of times throughout the years, throughout the 10 years, it underperformed, quote unquote, at the box office.
Oh.
Whereas I think, especially when measured against, well, we can say the Marvel movies, but definitely against Fury Road, the returns it got in the first week, in its opening weekend, which for some stupid reason, that's still the guiding metric for movies, was very low.
Well, I would say, I think we've talked about this a lot ad nauseum, really, that this idea that these studios are still pinning everything on the box office take on the opening weekend. And to a certain extent, is it failing because movies aren't good? Or is there something else going on, right?
Right. It did, a fraction of its budget during the opening weekend. And that's generally not good, I guess. I don't know. But the thing is this, Andrew, again, we've talked about this when Ghostbusters, what's the subtitle of the
Answer the Call.
Answer the Call, thank you, was released. Yes, it underperformed compared to Fury Road or other big budget action movies. But guess what? It was still number one for the weekend, right? That's nothing to sneeze at. Sure, it wasn't as big a number as it could be or maybe should have been. But as you said, it's not the movie that's failing. It's movies that are failing. When a movie with a disappointing opening weekend is also the number one movie of the weekend. And that's the thing that kind of threw me. And there's the other thing we won't spend much time on, if any. A portion of the internet were also chalking this up to the fact that it's an action movie that features a female protagonist. And that's the problem. Come on, shut the fuck up.
I mean, there are people on the internet that apparently hate when women are in things.
Right, right. So we'll just discard that because that's stupid. And I think what the actual cause, of which I'm sure there are many, but the main one is exactly what you pointed to. Movies are on life support right now. Not this movie. This movie is not a failure. If people went to movies, it would have done better. Because the people that went to the movies during Furiosa's opening weekend went to see Furiosa. So yeah, it's interesting, and I would say at least it's getting the critical praise, which speaks more to, I would say, its longevity, and hopefully as a sign or a signal to make more Mad Max movies, as long as we have George Miller, which is not going to be forever because the dude is in his 80s. One of the reasons that I went to see the movie, that I didn't sort of back out of it, was because of where this movie came from. And I don't know if you know much about the history behind this film, but it's fascinating. Fury Road took something like 30 years to get made, right? George Miller was storyboarding and writing a script for Fury Road in the 90s. And between then and when it actually got released, it was just a back and forth of ups and downs, successes and failures, right? And so I think the first step comes with a movie that, well, he didn't direct it, but he wrote a movie called Babe. He co-wrote a movie called Babe about a talking pig.
Sorry,
that did very, very well. And they're like, George, what do you want to do? He's like, Mad Max. That's great. But before that, let's get another Babe movie out of you. So he wrote and directed the sequel, Babe, A Pig in the City, which did very poorly. And when you realize it's made by George Miller, the Mad Max guy, it makes a lot more sense when you think of that movie in hindsight. And so they're like, we don't know about this Mad Max movie. And then he keeps making movies, as one does. And then he writes and directs the animated Penguin movie, Happy Feet, which does very, very well. And all of a sudden, they're like, George, what do you want to do next? He's like, Mad Max. And they're like, okay. And it took a long time. But the thing is, during that time, and there's a great book about this. It's an oral history called Blood, Sweat, and Chrome. And it's all about the making of Fury Road that spans the entire 30 years. It's fantastic. I'll put a link, I guess, in the show notes. I recommend the book wholeheartedly. Also, there's a little bit about this in the Titan books put out called The Art of Mad Max Fury Road. It's an art book, but it's got a lot of fantastic text about the history of the movie because there's so much history. But because they had 30 years, they kept refining the story, refining the characters. And one of the things they did is they had the time to basically create histories of every fucking character in Fury Road, to the point where it's like, with this Furiosa character is ostensibly the lead. I would say Mad Max Fury Road is more a Furiosa movie than a Mad Max movie. And so what they did is like they wrote the story of her life. And then George was like, this could be a pretty good movie. And so even before Mad Max Fury Road was even filming, he had written the script for Furiosa. And he gave the script to Charlize Theron saying like, this is kind of, I don't know if this is ever going to get made, but this is the story of your character. And she used it as a starting point to develop her character. Now, apparently he originally wanted to film Fury Road and Furiosa at the same time and kind of do like a close release between the both of them. But Warner Brothers wussed out. And so the actual plan, I still don't know why this didn't really happen. I think it might have to do with the lawsuits. Basically, George Miller sued Warner Brothers. I don't know the details. They settled. But he's like, we're going to do like a multimodal Mad Max thing here. We're going to release Fury Road, and instead of making a movie, since they didn't let them make a live action Furiosa movie at the same time, he's like, we can do like a Matrix thing. Let's do like an animated film. And he was working with this Japanese writer and artist who had worked on things like Neon Genesis Evangelion and had actually gotten to start working with Studio Ghibli, a guy named Mahiro Maeda, who also did concept art for Fury Road itself. And then they're like, let's release a video game too, like an open world video game that all ties the stuff together. And that's what piqued my interest when I started watching Fury Road, because I played the video game that was released. Obviously, the animated film didn't happen. They did make a video game. However, due to corporate bullshit, the plans changed, and they changed it from one type of game into another, back to open, basically they want to make an open world game. It's like, no, make it a narrative game. No, then make it open world again. It changed studios once. The thing is, they gave all the assets that they created for Fury Road and Furiosa to Avalanche Studios, the company that made the game. So there are locations and characters that appear in Furiosa that technically first appeared in the Mad Max video game from 2015. So I'm like, I'm watching this movie, I'm like...
And you played the game, and you're like, I think I know that.
Yeah, I'm like, oh, there's Chum Bucket. Oh, there's Scrotus. These are actual characters, by the way. And like, oh, this is dope. And then when they go to Gastown, which is the final location in the game, I'm like, oh, this looks like the fucking video. This is crazy. So I got a strange tie-in to a video game that I don't think anybody really played because it was only okay. But it's just a weird little tragedy of an interesting idea that George Miller wanted to bring into the world with this little sort of interlocking series of movie, animated film, and video game. But it all fell apart, and we got a great movie. We got the prequel 9 years later, and a video game that didn't meet the goal at all. So it's like, it got me diving back into all those books and stuff that I read before and going like, oh yeah, this is all super weird. And so like Mad Max itself, this sort of Fury Road plan, he had created this sort of utopic vision of what Mad Max in the 21st century could be, ends up being this weird wasteland littered with half completed thoughts and translated thoughts and appropriations of what was into something else with the video game. It's like it's a weird thing to see, because there are a lot, and we've talked about this, there are a lot of properties that have tried this sort of multimodal approach. Some of it never happens, some of it happens but unsuccessfully, and sometimes it works. But in the case of Mad Max, they tried, stuff got made, most of it works, but it didn't interlock the way that George Miller wanted it to. I can't say I'm upset about it necessarily, because the two movies we got are awesome, but it would have been cool to see that play out as originally intended. Long story short, Furiosa is great. I enjoyed it quite a bit.
Well, I'm glad you enjoyed it. Like I said, I was worried when you started. You're gonna be like, and this movie sucked ass, and Mad Max is the worst now.
Right? Yeah.
This movie was so bad, I hate the whole thing.
It ruined the entire franchise. I can't watch the old movies without being disgusted. Disgusted. So if you, dear listeners, have any thoughts about the topics we discussed this week, feel free to leave your thoughts as comments on the page for this episode at forallintents.net.
You can also post your comments or engage in conversations with other listeners on our Facebook page.
Yep. You can find us on other social media as well, specifically the places that Andrew and I frequent, which means you can find me on the now AI-dominant Instagram. at Bethel Comics, and you can find Andrew on Mastodon at ProfoundDark at dice.camp.
While you're at our website at forallintents.net, you can also take a look at our YouTube page, which you can find by clicking on the link in the corner that says YouTube. And if you're there, you'll find that we have the show simulcast in YouTube. If you do listen to the show on YouTube, please like and subscribe. And as the kids like to say, ring that bell.
We use 2 tracks of music for our show. One is called Disco Medusi, the other is called District 4. Both written and performed by Kevin MacLeod of the Clan MacLeod, immortal swordsman, graph paper enthusiast, and musician extraordinaire.
You can find his music and more at incompetech.filmmusic.io, and that's all licensed under the Creative Commons 4.0 attribution license.
If you like the show and like to help us out, the best way to do so would be to subscribe to the show using whichever podcasting service you happen to use. But what would help us out even more, though, would be to leave some sort of review, whether a text review or using their proprietary metric will help spread the word to new potential listeners through the magic of algorithms. We're not talking about Doctor Who this week. We can't, due to contractual obligations, but still going strong. I have seen the most recent episode. Andrew is not. I'm digging it. I'm still digging it. Actually, I will say this. When you get into watching it, I think this episode is like the most classic RTD style episode that we've seen so far.
I've heard people talk about it very positively.
Yeah. But I also have thoughts, and maybe we'll talk about those thoughts next week. So until you get to watch the new episode of Doctor Who, dear listeners, I'm D. Bethel.
And I'm Andrew Asplund.
And for all intents and purposes,
that was a podcast.
Then he makes a movie that does very well, called Happy Feet. And, that's what it was.
Sorry.
Hold on, let me go back because I'm going to blow your mind again. So he wrote a movie. Oh, we could change our about page on our website.
The sausage master.
I'm an English teacher and Andrew's a sausage handler. Matt, handler and master.
I don't know, whatever yes, have some. All right, clap me, baby.
See, Maruga is the sound your butthole's making. Maruga. You're like a Tex Avery cartoon. We bought a cow.
You bought a cow?
Well, a third of a cow. And you know what? We didn't get any milk for free. Yep.
Yeah.
Maruga.
Yeah, I got, Cobra Commander wrecked my ass.
So you're Glenless?
I'm Glenless. Sans Glen.
It's my favorite font type. Oh, man. JoJo's dumb. So is everything.
I mean, it's all... I'm sorry. Says the guy who really loves Transformers.
Yeah, well, what are you going to do? When you touch me like this, when you hold me like that, it's all coming back to me now. Thank you, Celine.